Babun it'amu ta'ami min al-Islam. The chapter which is in regards to feeding others is part of Islam. So subhanallah, we have been covering the last 5 chapters from Kitabul Iman, and inshallah in today's lesson we will be starting this 6th chapter from Kitabul Iman. The reason why Imam Bukhari rahimahullah has brought this chapter in the first place is to show us that one of them 70 branches of Iman is to feed others, and this has different levels that inshallah we will be studying in this lesson. And when we actually study the hadith, we realize that there are 2 branches which have been mentioned in this same hadith. So after you finish from this study, today's lesson, you can ask yourself, do I have these 2 qualities of Iman? If I don't, then I have 2 qualities of nifaq, hypocrisy. So if a person does not have these 2 qualities, they are 2 branches of hypocrisy, and we need to remove them because we do not want to compile the branches of hypocrisy inside our hearts. Rather, we want to learn about the branches of Iman so we can act upon this and we can build and complete our Iman. So if we were to look at the hadith from what Imam Bukhari rahimahullah narrates from, he says, Haddasana, it has been narrated to us from Amr ibn Khalid, who said, Haddasana Lays an Yazid, who narrated it from Abil Khair, and he narrated it from Abdullah ibn Amr radiyallahu anhuma. So this was the great sahabi who actually narrated this hadith. So very briefly to mention about this great sahabi, so we need to know about this great sahaba of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is only then when our Iman can really be complete, when we start to love these great sahaba. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu, he accepted Islam in the 7th Hijri, and this was before his father accepted Islam. His father was Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu, and he was 11 years old when he was married. And this was something which was a well-known custom to the Arabs. They used to get married at an early age, and they used to have children at a very early age as well. So his father Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu, he had his child Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu at the age of 12. Subhanallah, which means that there was only 12 years difference between the father and the son. One of the unique things which have been mentioned about Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu is that he used to be one of those who could read and write. And this was very rare between the Arabs at that time. Very less of the Sahabas could actually read and write. It has been mentioned by Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu himself, who has narrated 5,374 hadiths himself, and he is the highest narrator of hadiths that we have. He himself says, I do not know anyone who knows more knowledge than me, who has more hadiths than me, except for Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu. And the reason was because Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he used to memorize all his hadiths, whereas Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu, he used to write all his hadiths. It has been reported that once Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu, he once said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, shall I write down everything you say whenever you are happy and whenever you are angry? So the Prophet ﷺ responded, yes, for indeed I do not tell anything except for the truth, and the ultimate truth is this. And it is from this time Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu recorded 700 hadiths, and he compiled the first book of hadiths, and this was known as SAHIH as-Sadiqah. So this compilation of hadiths had happened in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, and it was passed on to the other Sahabas as well. In today's time, we can find the narration of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu in the compilations which Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah has compiled in his Musnad, and he has fixed a particular section for the narrations of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu anhu, and this is how it was preserved. The reason of why this is important to know is because in today's time there is a sect known by the name of Quranists. Quranists, they don't believe in hadith. They reject the hadith. They say it came about 100 years later after the Prophet ﷺ. We do not need the hadith, we only need the Quran. These are a deviant sect, so it is important to know the arguments for that, and inshallah we will do that in another time. Another sahifa, another book which was compiled in the earliest of the times, is known as Sahifa of Hammam ibn Munabbih. Hammam ibn Munabbih was a student of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, who used to write down the hadith as it was told by Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. It is mentioned that he was from Yemen. He was a Yemenite. And it is mentioned that he wrote about 138 hadiths in this compilation of the Sahifa of Hammam ibn Munabbih. So these are just two of those earliest of the sources of what has been mentioned in regard to the compilation of the hadiths, and they are more as well. They were the students of Hazrat Aisha radiyallahu anha, who had also carried on writing hadiths as well. So that will be all mentioned in another day. Inshallah we will have another session for that specifically. So as we mentioning in the hadith, it is mentioned by Abdullah ibn Amr radiyallahu anhuma, anna rajulun sa'ala nabiyyu sallallahu ayyul islami khayrun. It is mentioned in the hadith that a man once came to the Prophet ﷺ and he asked him that whose Islam is good. And the Prophet ﷺ replied, تُطْعِمُ الطَّعَامِ, to feed the people. وَتَقْرَأُ السَّلَامَ عَلَى مَنْ عَرَفْتَ وَمَنْ لَمْ تَعْرِفْ, and to read salam, to say salam upon those that you recognize and also upon those that you do not recognize. So subhanallah, these are two main branches of iman which Imam Bukhari rahimahullah is highlighting with this hadith. The question is, what is the link between these two qualities which the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned? One which is in regard to feeding others, and one which is in relation to saying salam to others. So what is the link between these two qualities? Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he mentions that the link between both of these two qualities is that one is in relation to good actions and one is in relation to good words. And both of them, when they are coming together, they come to a perfect treatment known as ihsan, which linguistically means to do good, which the Prophet ﷺ had taught us, the righteous character towards the other people. This hadith is not only referring to feeding the poor people, but rather it is general. So it is talking about feeding your neighbors. As it has been mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ that none of you is a true believer whilst he goes to sleep with his belly full and his neighbor is hungry. So from this hadith we learn the rights of the neighbors as well. One of the rights of the neighbors is that we should ask them for some food, and it is mentioned in the hadith that when you are making something, then add some more water to it, meaning when in your handi or whatever you are cooking, make it more bigger. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put more barakah, more blessing in your food. And when you have more blessing in your food, even though you might have a little, it will suffice of all your family. But if you don't have blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your food, even though you have so much, then even then it will not suffice you. So we should increase in making our food so we can share with our neighbors. And some of the effects of this is that it will increase your Muslim brotherhood, and it will increase your love even with the non-Muslims. They will get to see the akhlaq of the Muslims. They will get to see what Islam really teaches these Muslims, and this might be the first step which will incline this person towards Islam. This is the beauty of feeding others and to share your food with even the non-Muslims. So subhanallah, we should take this as an advice from the Prophet ﷺ, and we should try to implement this with our neighbors. The second type of feeding which has been mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah is in relation to the visitors. The Prophet ﷺ said, Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhiri fal yukrim dayfahu ja'izatahu. Whoever believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he believes in the final day, then he should honor his guest and he should reward him as well. So the Sahabas, they said, Wama ja'idatuhu, that what is his reward? The Prophet ﷺ said, Yawmun wa laylatun, that one day and one night is his reward, meaning this is the minimum amount. Wa diyafatuhu salatatu ayyam, and the good hospitality is for 3 days, and whatever is after that, then that is a form of sadaqah for you. Subhanallah, when we look into our attitude and our behavior towards our visitors, then there are 3 types of behavior which the fuqaha have mentioned. The first attitude towards a visitor is that you don't want your visitor to go. So you're looking after your visitor and you're giving him good hospitality. You have made some good food for him and you are looking after the visitor in the best way you possibly can. The second type of attitude towards the visitor is that when you want the visitor to go as soon as possible and you start to look for excuses so he goes early. This is the second type of attitude towards the visitor. And the third type of attitude towards the visitor is when you don't even want the visitor to come in the first place, and you tell them a list of excuses beforehand so they don't come to visit you. Out of the 3 attitudes which have been mentioned, only the first one is the akhlaq of the Muslim. If anyone has the second 2 attitude towards the visitors, then that is sign of hypocrisy in the heart, and a person needs to remove this attitude, because these are attitudes which of the hypocrites. They are not the attitude of the Muslim. Rasulullah ﷺ said, whoever believes in Allah and the final day should honor his guests. If anyone does have this great quality in his heart and he is looking after his visitors, he is giving them good hospitality, then this is a sign of iman in his heart. An example of this is the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the 2 angels to the house of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Both of these 2 angels came in the human form and they came as visitors to the house of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And it mentioned in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَتْ رُسُلُنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ بِالْبُشْرَى. Indeed came our messenger to Ibrahim alayhi salam with the glad tidings. قَالُوا سَلَامًا. And the first thing that they said was Salamu alaykum. Subhanallah, the first thing we learn from this is that we should always say Salamu alaykum, and this is the second part of the lesson. Inshallah, if we can get time, we will talk about this in today's lesson. If not, we will mention it in the next lesson. The first thing that they said was Salamu alaykum. Qala salamun. So Ibrahim alayhi salam responded with Wa alaykumus salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. فَمَا لَبِثَ أَنْ جَاءَ بِعِجْلٍ هَنِيزٍ. And Ibrahim alayhi salam did not stay except that he was very quick in order to bring him some food of a roasted calf. And this was when Sarah alayhi salam, she was making the roasted calf for these visitors. So subhanallah, we learned from this that even the visitors that we don't know, like Ibrahim alayhi salam had never seen these 2 visitors, but still he chose to make the food for them as soon as possible. So we should reflect upon this and we should ask ourselves that do we only serve food to those that we know? Do we only serve food to our relatives and our friends? And when it comes to visitors that we are not too familiar with, we don't even bother asking them for any food whatsoever. This is not the way of the Prophets, it's not the way of the Prophet ﷺ. They used to serve food to any kind of a visitor that would come to their house. So this is the best form of having an attitude towards the visitors, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to act upon this. Another category of feeding others is when you are feeding your own family, your own wife, your own children, a category which we don't normally focus on in terms of getting reward. We think of this that we have to do this anyway. But if we were to focus on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ mentioning the reward of this, then subhanallah, we will realize the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah is so merciful that He wants to reward you for an action that you have to do anyway. You have to feed your children anyway. It is mentioned in a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. He says the Prophet ﷺ said, and this hadith has been mentioned in Sahih Muslim, that a dinar which you spend for the sake of Allah, and a dinar which you spend on freeing a slave, and a dinar which you give in charity to the poor person, and a dinar which you spend on your family. The greatest of these in reward is that which you spend on your own family. In another hadith, it has been mentioned by Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu. He says the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam once said to him, "You will never spend anything in seeking the razamandi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the happiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you will be rewarded for it, even to the extent of a single morsel that you put into the mouth of your wife, you will be rewarded for that as well." It is mentioned in another hadith narrated by Aisha radiyallahu anha. She says that once a woman entered upon me and she had 2 daughters with her. She asked me for some food, and I looked into the house and I could not find anything except for 1 date. I gave it to her and she shared this between her 2 daughters, and she did not even have anything for herself. Subhanallah, this shows that how the love of a mother is. She's starving herself, but she didn't even have nothing, and she split that 1 date into 2 halves and she gave it to her 2 daughters, and she didn't have nothing herself. So Aisha radiyallahu anha, she mentions that later on when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came home, I told him about this waqia, about this incident, that a woman who came to my house and I had nothing to give to her except for a single date, and she shared this between her 2 daughters. The Prophet ﷺ responded, "Whoever is tested with any of the young daughters and he treats them kindly, they will be a form of a shield for him from the hellfire on Yawmul Qiyamah." So we learn from this hadith that whenever we are tested with our poverty, or we are tested with our difficult times, and we give priority to our children, we look after our children in terms of their education, we look after them in terms of their rizq, their food and their clothing, then even though all these actions are something which we need to do anyway, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of His rahmah will change these actions into a form of a sadaqah for yourself. As for those who have daughters, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give an even higher reward to them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make them as a form of a shield for their parents. If it was written for them that they are going to go to the hellfire, their daughters will not allow that. And it mentions in the hadith that they will stop and they will be a shield in front of the hellfire. They will not allow the hellfire to touch their parents. It has been mentioned in another narration narrated by Aisha radiyallahu anha, and this has also been mentioned in Sahih Muslim. She said that a poor woman came to me carrying her 2 daughters. So she asked for some food and I gave her some dates. I gave her 3 dates. So she gave each one of them dates to her 2 daughters, and she kept one for herself. As she was about to put this date into her mouth, the other daughter asked for some more, that she wanted more food. So subhanallah, the mother only had 1 date for herself, but when she heard her daughter say that, "I want another date," the mother, she split this 1 date in half and she gave it to her 2 daughters, and she did not have nothing herself. Aisha radiyallahu anha, she said that I was so impressed with this, that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came home, I informed him about this incident. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded that because of this action, Allah has granted her Jannah for this, and He has saved her from the hellfire. Subhanallah, only a mother's heart can really do this, where they won't even feed themselves and they would feed their own children. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He is even more merciful than the own mother, He gave them Jannah because of this. So never despair from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and have hope that whatever you are doing, whatever you are spending in the way of your children, whether it is their Islamic knowledge or whether it is in relation to the academic studies, by you supporting them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you as a form of a sadaqah for doing all of this. Another form of spending is the spending on an orphan, on a yatim. A yatim child is that person who does not have a father who can earn for him. This is the Islamic perspective of a yatim who does not have a father who can go out and earn for him. So to look after someone who is a yatim, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that you will be with me like this, and he was indicating towards his two fingers to show that how close these two fingers are. So subhanallah, not only that you are being promised paradise, but you are also being promised the highest level of Jannah with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So subhanallah, these are one of those opportunities which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given. If any one of us has been blessed with enough wealth, then we cannot afford to lose this opportunity. So these were a few points which have been mentioned about feeding others. The second part of the hadith is when Rasulullah ﷺ said that you say salam upon those that you recognize, and you also say salam upon those that you don't recognize also. So inshallah, in the next lesson we will be looking at the different aspects, the different hadiths, and in terms of the fiqh and the ahkam of saying salam to other people, and also in regard to returning the salam back as well. So that will take a bit more time, so we will leave that for the next lesson inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to act upon what's been said. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ.